Oh, that one? No, I did not get another tattoo. But it looks pretty badass, no? And look how cute this is. If you're interested in amazing live streams, check out Rawcode's channel. I'm not sponsored, but he has a great channel, so check it out. Now, let's get started with today's content. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Anais, and this is 100 Days of Kubernetes, the challenge where we aim to learn something new related to Kubernetes across 100 days, and me sharing with you here right on my YouTube channel for you to follow along or nitpick different videos. Now, if you install any resource on your Kubernetes cluster, let's assume you have a Kubernetes cluster, you want to install an application on top of that cluster, you maybe want to install different tools. Anything that you do, even if it's just spinning up a cluster, you want to know whether or not the nodes and the resources on top are performing properly. Are they working? Are they running? Is anything broken? Do you have to fix something? Did something happen on your cluster? Like, did you get bombarded with a distributed denial of service attack? I don't know, something, right? So you want to have the insights. Now, you could go ahead and use kubectl. Kubectl get nodes, kubectl get pods, but that's really tedious, and you just see the specific snapshots of how the resource is doing right now in that specific moment. Or you could query for their logs. You could query for your pod logs, for your deployment logs, and so on. But that also is really impractical because it's imperative way of doing things. It's like, here, please tell me things, instead of, no, if something is wrong, you come to me, tell me, right? So what do we do instead? We install Prometheus. What is Prometheus? Why would you want to use it? When would you want to use it? How do you use it? Let's get started. Okay, so we are back at the drawing board. Let's assume that this is your Kubernetes cluster over here, K8s. Now, here you might have, let's say, 3 different nodes. Nodes. And then like a master node that takes care of everything. Now, usually, your cluster is kind of like a black box. It's kind of blurry. What is actually happening within there, right? What is going on? How do we see it? How can we look behind the curtains and see what's going on? So we can use kubectl to communicate with our kube API that is in our master, in our main node, or somewhere in our Kubernetes cluster. So we could use that and communicate with it. As just mentioned, it's pretty it's not too nice. It's really impractical. So what we can do instead, we can set up Prometheus. Now I will just write prom. And Prometheus will be running. Now Prometheus will be running, for example, as one node on top of our cluster, like several nodes. It will be basically, if you use the Prometheus operator or you install Prometheus as Kubernetes resources, as Kubernetes custom resource definition and operators on top of your cluster, it will spin up several nodes, several services, and so on, so you can access it. So you set up Prometheus, and Prometheus then, once it's within your cluster, it can access other resources within your cluster. It can monitor other resources within your cluster. And for that, Prometheus uses a pull mechanism. So it's basically requesting from all the nodes that you have within your cluster. It's consistently, let's say every 15 seconds by default, pinging those resources, pinging those endpoints of the other pods, of the other containers that are within that cluster, of the other services. It's pinning it consistently and be like, are you alive? And then the service, if it's alive, it's going to respond, hey, yes, I'm here, right? So if the service is not alive, if the service just died because of whatever reason, Prometheus will receive either like an error message that will tell us more what happened in an instant to that pod for it to die or similar, or it will just try to reping it if it didn't get any message, right? So we'll consistently ping those nodes. Why is it using this pull mechanism? Like pulling the information out of the other resource that we have within our cluster. If we use instead a push mechanism, where we push to our monitoring tool, let's say this is another monitoring tool and this is another cluster, monitor. So how does the monitoring tool actually know that all those resources here are alive? Those resources would have to tell the monitoring tool consistently. Let's say also every 10 seconds or every 15 seconds. Now, it could happen that one of those messages actually dies. It never reaches the monitoring tool. So the monitoring tool immediately has to assume something happened, right? If this message didn't get through. So basically the resources here will have to flood the monitoring tool with information to make sure that even if some die, they get through on a regular basis, so the monitoring tool actually knows what's happening within our cluster. Versus Prometheus is optimizing this process by saying, hey, no, I'm just going to pull the information that I need out of those resources, out of the cluster itself, which is pretty smart. Now, we can use Prometheus together with Grafana. In which case, Prometheus will, the data that it has, which is not in such a pretty format, it will push it to Grafana, and Grafana will place it in really nice graphs that show us different matrices and different things. This is another graph. And this is pretty nice. So Grafana will store, depending on how we use Grafana, over time, the different the different information that Prometheus collects about our application. And that's on high level how it works. Now, in some cases, our application can't actually reply to Prometheus. Prometheus doesn't have access to the information of our application. Oops, what do we do now, right? Prometheus can't just access any application. Most applications that are deployed through Kubernetes resources, through Kubernetes manifests, can be basically through their tags, through their labels, we can tell Prometheus to monitor it, and Prometheus will be able to monitor it. However, there are some applications where that's not the case, in which case we need like a middleman called an exporter. And the exporter is basically responsible to make those services that we have running in our cluster, the information of the services, the state of the services, discoverable for Prometheus, so Prometheus can get the information. So in this case, we install an exporter. Now, this is the high-level overview on how it's supposed to work. In the most ideal case, and that's what I'm basically working towards, is that we have our deployment tool. Over here, let's say this is Argo CD, and that runs on another cluster, or like on our cluster, could be the same cluster. And in this case, we have Argo communicating with our Prometheus. And once we install new manifests to our Argo cluster, let's say these are the manifests, we want to install it through Argo CD. Let's say those manifests, they are bad, right? They are evil and they don't work on our cluster. They don't work in general, but we want to deploy them, those changes or whatever it is. Now Argo CD will deploy it, and then it should receive automatic updates from Prometheus to know whether or not the resources after they are deployed are healthy. And that allows us to automatically do rollbacks in case the resources are not healthy. That's the ultimate end goal. So what we have to do, it's the only thing that we have to do is push these manifests to Git. So here's us, yeah. And we push those resources to Git. And then once we deploy them, let's say or we push them to our main branch, and this is the branch that runs our deployment, then Argo CD will take those changes, get them out, will try to deploy them here on this cluster. If it fails to deploy it, if the deployment does not work, if the deployment is unhealthy, then it can perform a rollback. Argo CD can then do a rollback. And for that, we have to make the connection between Prometheus and Argo CD. They have to be tightly communicating. And we'll figure that out in the next video. But for today, what is Prometheus? How do we set it up? So this is a high-level overview of what I did. If we go to my Twitter profile, you can see that I actually posted a tweet here. And it was kind of in desperation. I posted, hey everyone, I'm looking for Prometheus Resources. And that's because Prometheus, the documentation is not focused on deployments with Kubernetes, on Kubernetes. It's focused on using Prometheus to monitor web applications. And you can use Prometheus to monitor any web application. You don't have to use it in combination with Kubernetes. You could. So I'm also going to show you some tutorials that are really nice to combine it without Kubernetes. Anyway, so in this tweet thread, you can see a bunch of really useful resources that the community kindly linked. It's really amazing. So have a look at that. Linked on my public Notion page. Now, what is my public Notion page? This is my public Notion page. And linked below with basically all the notes that I took on Prometheus and how I set it up ultimately. Now, you can see here from this video that I watched from this webinar, this is basically Prometheus. Prometheus pulls the information from targets, such as node exporters, such as the web application and so on, combines it maybe, and sends it to, or like Grafana pulls it out actually. Pulls it from Prometheus, the different resources that Prometheus has collected. And then we have an alert manager in case something goes wrong, we want to be notified, right? Now, here also some resources linked at the end. I want to just highlight that Sysdig, I don't know how to pronounce it. Sysdig has some really amazing resources. Have a look at them. This entire blog post is really great. They also have some older blog posts. I would be a bit more careful with those, but this blog post is really great. Now, the thing is that usually, or most of the tutorials are focused on setting actually up Prometheus to monitor your Kubernetes cluster, so to monitor your nodes, to monitor your pods, and so on. It's not, or like, yeah, it's not really meant for you to monitor, or like, it's not, most of the tutorials don't target you monitoring a specific application, which I wanted to do in my case. So what I end up doing in the end, well, you can see here is like they have a really nice overview. Well, here's the Prometheus documentation. And here, Grafana has a really nice overview on how you can set up Prometheus to monitor itself, which is pretty straightforward. So you could also use that. Now, what I did in the end, I used the community Prometheus stack Helm chart. And what it does, it sets up all of the resources. So once you install this Helm chart, just this Helm chart in your cluster, only installing this Helm chart, you will be able to access this port 9090. I'm not going to refresh because it's actually not running anymore, but this is basically what it looks like. So after you install the Helm chart from this application, it's pretty straightforward. You can watch some of my previous Helm videos, super straightforward. You just go ahead, install the Helm chart, and then it runs all the resources that you need to use Prometheus. Now, I haven't figured out how to use all of them yet in its best format, but once you have set that up, you can basically see how Prometheus is monitoring all of those different resources that it has set up. Now, it's monitoring it through this endpoint / metrics, all of the resources. You can also go ahead, and I'm going to show you that in a second, go to the alerts page, go to the main page, and then query for the different information. You can also set up alerts and so on. So anyway, this is basically what you will see then, which is pretty handy. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted to set up a specific application, and this is the best that I could find. So those amazing maintainers have set up this really great README file that walks you through how you can basically, once you install this Prometheus operator itself, install the Prometheus operator on top of your Kubernetes cluster, and you just basically clone this repository, and then you say kubectl apply file bundle.yaml, and you have the Prometheus operator installed, and it works. So once you have it installed, and this will walk you through it basically, and you can probably find more detailed information on it, you can go to this page, and it's a getting started guide with the Prometheus operator. Now here again, a really nice graphic walking you through it step by step. You set up the deployment. In this case, it's using a simple example application that just has a funny message. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then it has a service associated to that deployment and a service monitor. Now you need the service monitor to basically tell the Prometheus operator, like, actually, hey, here's something you have to monitor. Now you set up these rules, user rules on what the cluster role, on what Prometheus in this case is allowed to do. So you set up a cluster role for Prometheus to be able to basically watch the other resources within your cluster, as in this case it's allowed then to watch all of those resources. Now you set that all up. This can be all done within one YAML file. And then you set up the service monitor that monitors the service. Now you have to make sure that those labeled, the team front end here, and also the team front end here and the pod monitor label, actually match this, where is it? The service monitor here. So those are connected. Those are then communicating with each other. Now you set all of that up, and then you can go ahead and you say kubectl forward, port forward, and then you forward basically the service that you have set up here, and it's all within my Notion page. You forward the service, which is exposing 8080. You forward that, and then you can access it. Now, if we go and put localhost 8080, this is actually, I think this is supposed to be the website itself. It confused me a bit, but I don't think this is actually not working, the site. It's working. So this is like their example application. Also, if I now go ahead, so we are here. We have here the service YAML file that I just mentioned, right? That exposes port 8080. And we say kubectl get all. And as you can see, We right now have a deployment of 3 pods running. They are all running right now. Here's our Prometheus service. It's of type node port, so we can access it, which we did. And I'm going to show you that in a second as well. And then we have our example app. Now, if I ping that app that's currently running, not in a different tab here. So if I ping this app, well, in the metrics, if I say /metrics, I'm getting all the previous metrics and the HTTP requests that have been sent to that website itself, to that localhost 8080, which is really like, it's nice, right? You can also, through their UI, through the Prometheus UI, you can filter those different logs that you see here. I think that's how it works. Anyway, so let's clear this up, and now we could go ahead. And what you do basically, so once you have all of this running, as I just described, you have the operator running for Prometheus, you have Prometheus running, you have basically set it up. This is not a Helm chart. You have set up the operator just by cloning the repository, applying the bundle YAML file. You have set this up, then you have set up the other resources. You just go ahead and say kubectl port forward, and you want to port forward the service Prometheus, but you also want to forward the example app to 8080. And that's how you can basically access the example application at a port 8080, and you can access Prometheus right here. So as you see, actually I wanted to keep that. As you see, here's localhost 9090, and here are our different pods running. So if we compare the pod name right now, I'm gonna go to pod. Here, this pod ends, this is the pod name. It ends with 47DVN. Do we have a 47DVN? Here, 47DVN. It's the same pod. 5cc, yeah. Looks like it's the same pod. So those are the same pods that are right now running. As you can see, they're all up, running, and healthy. Now you can go ahead and you can also use this query section here that I haven't explored in further detail. So this is definitely going to be another video. This is just basically on how can you get your application up and running until this point. Now I hope this was useful. If it was, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for upcoming videos. I would highly appreciate your support. Also, if you watched this far, it must be that you want to learn about Prometheus, that you want to learn about Kubernetes maybe, and DevOps. So you might want to subscribe to my weekly DevOps newsletter where I share free online learning resources right to your inbox from amazing people such as yourself. Now, I hope to see you in one of my upcoming videos. Have a lovely day or evening, depending where you're at. Bye-bye.